we've got the Creative Glue.
Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of Creative Glue, where we continue to explore the common bonds that unite creatives from around the globe. I'm your host, Scott Robinson, and today I'm joined by Shana Stein, a highly accomplished director and producer whose career spans some of television's most popular series. From her early days as a theatre kid in Texas to producing hundreds of hours of television before stepping into a director's role, Shana's journey stems from a deep love for storytelling. Her impressive credits include Power, Jack Ryan, Monk, 90210, and Unforgettable, with recent work on The Boys and the upcoming Testaments. With a passion for telling authentic, character-driven stories, Shana has built a career that blends preparation, collaboration, and a genuine respect for her creative process. Shana, thanks so much for joining me. I guess I'd love to start with your journey and how you came to find your way from acting to producing and then directing and you know, a bit about that path.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Scott. I really appreciate it. That's one of those classic, tell us a little about yourself questions. Let's see, I directed my first play in high school. But yet the first time I found myself on stage that I recall was like as Minnie Mouse in a church play when I was 4. So I guess that is where I originated. I always wanted to move to Hollywood. From the time I was 4 and got bitten by the bug, I started asking my mom to take us. And I asked her so many times that she said to shut me up. She was like, I'll take you when you're 12. And then I turned 12 and I was like, okay, let's go. And she was like, you're still on about that?
Didn't forget.
No. And honestly, what's great is that I've been doing this for a minute now, and I still have all of that gratitude for getting to kind of, live my childhood dreams. And what we're all so grateful for that I find that like really permeates and I find that on sets a lot. And if we ever kind of need a reset, of a moment, it's just take it back and be like, we all sat in a room and chose these jobs. What we set out to do. So, yeah, I was a theater major at NYU, and I sometimes joke that I was like, I started therapy about the same time I started college. So I was doing a lot of introspection, and my love of storytelling never waned. It just kind of, I'd say, evolved and progressed. And when I started realizing all the other things that we can kind of do to tell stories and getting more into the collaboration process, I think for so many of us, I talked to a lot of other people that were originally drawn to acting because as little kids, that's what you see as the storytelling and then just kind of doing it yourself. And then as these other jobs, like I can do that. So there's people who are like, I can make props. I can make do that for a living. So yeah, from NYU, I did a little bit of acting, I think for all of a year out of school, where I had 6 auditions in a year. I
Wow.
booked 3 jobs, which I was later told was very impressive odds.
Yes.
Let's see. One was a screaming nurse in a horror film, and the lingerie sales lady in a soap opera. And so
Very diverse.
very diverse. And while doing all of that, I was like researching the business and learning about the business. And I went to work at an agency and to learn more about the industry and how it worked. And I met so many great people there. And from there, I started doing short film. I did my short film and I went to Ep5. So I left there to go to grad school. And while I was at grad school, I ended up producing a movie of a director that I'd met while I was working at William Morris. And it was a movie called Restaurant with Adrian Brody and Lauryn Hill. And very recently departed Malcolm Jamal Warner, who was just such a lovely soul, and Simon Baker. And let's see, it was a really fantastic, young cast. And that led me, then we went around and did the festival circuit, and I met more people, and I went to work at Anonymous Content for Steve Golan, and I was in because being an independent producer as a young woman in the 90s was a very challenging time. And then
Imagine.
from there, I found development to be so slow, and I wanted to do something with a quicker pace. And I turned to television, and I started all over again in television after like producing and developing. That I had to start over again. And so I started as an assistant to a producing director named Randy Zisk, who's a wonderful, kind human being, and really learned a lot from him. And that's where I say I kind of grew up on Monk. So I was there for 7 seasons. And
Wow.
with my background in acting, I worked my way up as a producer who kind of oversaw all of the casting on the show. And we sometimes would have 3 sessions for a day player because it was such a unique tone on the show.
Definitely.
And Tony Shalhoub, who's just really a remarkable talent and so specific. So Tony was an executive producer on the show, and he would sign off on everybody who was on screen as well. So casting on the show was it was a really great place to learn a lot about the business, and from doing deals to how to work with actors. And then I got to be around post a lot with Randy as well. And so I would see, I learned a lot that's how I started kind of learning the nuts and bolts of directing. It was like being on set and observing and seeing what worked and what didn't, and kind of learning from the best, and also learning from, mistakes as well that people would make, and this stuff, what makes it on screen ultimately. I'd see directors spending a lot of time getting a cool shot, and then it would end up on the cutting room floor because it didn't help advance the story, that kind of thing. So, and simple stuff. So it was great. By the time I did get to start directing, I was like, I joke that there's an expression called shadowing in the business. I don't know if you know that one, but when people want to go direct on a show, sometimes they'll come in and shadow for an episode before they'll do or get a chance and stuff. And I was like kind of shadowing for 15 years before I got to direct. And so by the time I did, I felt very prepared, and because directing television certainly is not an entry-level position.
No,
So,
I can imagine.
yeah.
And so, having worn all those different hats through that career, like how did each role sort of, influence and inform the way that you tell stories today?
Well, I do think that wearing all those hats. So it all starts with the script, right? And then asking that question, it just takes me back to that expression, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I think it's having great respect for every person who participates in that, and knowing that that each person, it's like hire great people and let them do their job. And so directing and producing, and if you're doing, if I'm directing an episodic show that's already been established, it's very different than, producing something from the pilot stage forward. There's just an understanding the nuances and the differences of those things, and remembering which job I'm doing at that time. And I say that with again, with a lot of respect. It's like when I'm going in and I'm guest directing on a show, I'm a guest in their home, and I try to leave it in better shape than I found it. And also, just know that it's an unusual position, like directing, because when you're on a TV show that's up and running, because somebody said to me, like in a conversation with an executive recently, they were like, so, when you're there and you're the boss and you're in charge. I was like, respectfully, that's really, like, the showrunner is the absolute boss, but then they have a boss above that they work for the studio, and then the studio reports to the network. And so I think it's kind of keeping that in mind and knowing where we are, and that we're all just getting everybody to tell the same story. Like that to me is the job of a director, is like making sure we're all telling the same story and giving people the freedom and creating the space for them to do their magic. And if something starts to go off story or off the thing, then kind of, gently course correcting or having a conversation or saying, oh, that's an interesting choice, and seeing where that was coming from, and being open to it, but remembering and just reminding us, like, that we're all telling the same story.
Yeah. And working between something that's already in motion and having to come in and do that, compared to, say, a brand new series where you come in on the ground floor and you're part of how that story is going to be told. Do you have a preference? I'm guessing it's always more fun to start from the ground up and craft something with a team.
I don't, it's funny, because my favorite thing that I've ever directed was The Boys. That when I did that, like, that was well established. So no, they each have their advantages, and I think that you can put absolutely as much creativity, and you should, into the things, but it's kind of like, I don't know, when you do a jigsaw puzzle, and they're like, there's all the pieces are already there, and there's a certain thing, but it's like you figure out how to put it together. Within that, like, being a super fan of The Boys. I was like, I love the show so much. I was so excited to be there, and they're such an incredible team. And I learned from the VFX people. The stunt people are some of the absolute best in the business. John Koyama, who's nominated for an Emmy again this year, and so you just collaborate, and you work together, and I was like, that wouldn't be any more fun than, you know what I mean? Like, there's, like, starting from scratch with something isn't any more fun than doing that, because I'm sorry, this is a long way around. Like, I do think we kind of start from scratch every day, and no matter what the show is, like, you kind of go in and you prepare and prepare and prepare, but then you've just got to be prepared to pivot, because, like, there's always new discoveries and things on the day as well. And nothing that most of us can come up with alone in our room is half as good as what we can do when we, collaborate and let everybody bring their best selves.
Imagine is a different challenge, coming into something that's iconic to either yourself or the audience, compared to sitting there and going, how can we create something that will become iconic into the future?
Yeah, it is. And I've also worked on a lot of spin-offs or sequels, or I love the expressions that they're using now and things. Like, one of the shows I'm working on, they're like, it's an extension of the universe, as the other one is an expansion of the universe. I'm like, okay. And I do understand the differences of those. Like, working on Power, we had the first spinoff that we had was really just a sequel, and so it was and I don't mean just a sequel. I mean, it was wonderful in all the ways, but it was an extension, right? And then the second one that we did was a prequel, and then that was a period piece. So that was that expanded it in a different direction. So one extended it and kept it going, and in the same way it was going, and then the other one kind of expanded it, and then the differences of that. And so that's fun too. That's like, what's in the DNA that people love about the first one that we're going to bring those audience in, But then if there's people who are completely have never seen that show before, what's the new audience going to have, and what makes this one different, and what
Yeah.
makes it special?
And you would have worked on Power with our previous guest, Mauricio, as well.
Yes, Mauricio. I love Mauricio. He is a ball of love and light, that he just comes into the room with. And again, that's that thing of like just letting people do their magic. Like Mauricio is so good at his job. And, working with somebody like him, like we could talk, and you could talk about what you want it to look like and what you want it to feel like. And then he can just kind of come in and make it even better than what you could have imagined,
Yeah. And I guess as a director, like what are some of those things that are important in creating that environment where, cast and crew can actually do their best and getting the best from the people that you're putting together or that have been put together for you to work with?
Well, I think, communication is so key, and making sure that we're all telling the same story. Um, and keeping a really open environment, and it's got to be okay to fail. You've got to be able to take big swings and have them not land as much as when they do. And I think that is just another way of saying you got to have a really safe space a safe space for people. And in production, things can get very rushed and can be a big pressure cooker, reminding people that it's okay. It's not live theater. We'll try it. If it works, it works. If not, there's always take 2 or take 5. Like it's okay.
What
And
sort of time do you typically spend on an episode of a typical
okay,
production?
so I've done episodes from 8-day episodes to 25-day episodes.
Wow. I work more in the commercial, world of creating advertising, and sometimes you think, yeah, we just spent 2 days for a 30-second ad. So some people have the same thing, like 25 days to create a 30-minute episode or a 20-minute episode.
I still think the math of the commercial beats that, though. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly.
it does. Two days for 30 seconds doesn't kind of add up the same way.
No, it really doesn't. But
So
the
I shouldn't
reason
be surprised about 25 days, to be honest with you.
yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
That's huge. But that's necessitated by stunts and VFX and motion capture and that kind of thing. That's not a talky drama.
Yeah, they happen. Days of Our Lives happens a little quicker,
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, no, I have a friend who's a soap director, and they do multiple episodes a day.
wow.
In a day.
Yeah, so it's just such a dramatic difference, isn't it? Really?
I don't know, like, again, just the skill set that those people have, and the amount of memorization they've got to do, and for a day, it's 100 pages. It's like, and then the next day, like another 100. It's like my hat is off to them.
It's not my scene, that's for sure. Either being involved or watching, to be honest. But anyway.
No. I mean, on this last episode I just did, it was like we had 3 8-page days, and we're like, that's so many pages a day. But I mean, we're respectfully, like, we're doing different kinds of coverage and lighting setups, and it's just a different style. It's just a different storytelling format. So
Yeah, I mean, thinking about some of the projects you've worked on, what's pushed you creatively or logistically and navigating some of those challenges?
Well, let's see. Asking what pushes me creatively, was that the question? Like, in navigating
Yeah.
challenges?
Yeah, and especially in relation, talking, all those different projects, from, that, oh wow, we've got these scripts and this is our timelines, or any of the things that sort of start to challenge our ability to tell the story creatively. Sometimes I think it's
Yeah.
always interesting to see how people navigate creating solutions.
I do think that necessity is the mother of invention. I am a big believer. And I also think the work expands or contracts to fill the time. So you figure out how long you have, and then you kind of back into that sometimes, honestly. When you're working on a show that is an 8-day episode, it's just a math problem at a certain point. Like you've got this long to do the different scenes, and you come up with creative efficiencies. You have to understand, like, again, if it's already an established show, I do a ton of research. So I'll watch all the episodes twice, and you just kind of start to, you inherently soak in the style of the show. Like, okay, this one has a lot of handheld. This one has, this one actually they're not afraid of a oneer over here. Like a lot of connective moments, or looking at how the pacing, the timing, the coverage, those kinds of things on each show. And so then you break it down. So I prepare a lot. I work always with the DP and the first AD, and we'll go through. So I'll take the script, go to the location. The three of us will usually act it out in some ways, which is one of my favorite parts of the process. It's kind of hilarious. And it takes you back to like that middle school thing of like, you're over there and I'm saying this and I'm doing that. And it starts to, you start to get a feel for it. And you're like, oh, you know what? We're going to need a chair over here. We're going to need get rid of that chair. We don't want that chair because she'll definitely go sit down in that chair and the scene's going to die. Like, and then we'll figure out where we want to shoot the master from. And then we'll figure out what we can connect and where we can hand off and what they are. And then we start to shot list. And then we look at our shot list and we say, okay, if it takes a half hour for every setup, we're never going to have that long. Okay, we got to reduce our shot list. So we've got to, come up with efficiencies. And they're like, oh, you know what? We wanted this wide and we wanted this tight, but what we can really do is if we start off with this wide, we can, take that into a 2-shot and then hand it off to a single. And you figure out how to start to combine stuff, and it just evolves, and until you can kind of fit it into what you think your box is. And then you show up on the day and it's not anything that you planned, and you throw it all out and you start over. But at least you had a plan going in. So that's
sure.
that. There was a thing on Jack Ryan where we did this whole, I saw the camera guy put it up on his Instagram, and somebody put it on like learn filmmaking. And it was a shot that we did, and like I had, I came up with it because like I had the shot list of all the moments we needed. And I was like, as I went through it, I went on the set that day, I was like, we can actually, if we go from here, and we had a whole like oneer of a guy going in, getting a safe, getting stuff out of the safe, following it, going and putting a thing in his car, feeling like he senses somebody behind him. And, then he turns and they each pull guns on each other. And they're like, well, we had this thing. They're like, well, how can we, now if we do that, the camera needs to come around and it needs to be where the car is. And I was like, just put it in neutral and have the grips roll it out. Like as soon as we start to come around. So we went like really old school and like we put it in neutral, and the first AD ran over and helped the grips. And they just like, after we, handed off from it, they just rolled it out of the way, and the camera guy got right around where the car was so he could get in the trunk shot, looking up at the guy. And then that turned into a 50-50 of a like Western standoff. And so again, like everybody, it's like you come up with things, and in that time it worked. Sometimes they're like, no, you can't because there's a pole there. You go, okay. And then you move on. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's really everybody kind of coming together. And some shows like that you can edit in your head. And then there's some shows that they want like a ton of coverage and they don't want to do that. So you have to know what the style is of the show and what the showrunners are really looking for.
Yeah, and again, how that type of direction and shooting impacts the flow and the style of the show. I mean, I always remember watching West Wing and just the amount of backwards oneers that they would do, which created this very unique flow to that show in that time. Nobody else was really doing it back then.
Right.
And it was so interesting to watch because, you're sort of like, wow, how are they doing this? And then it just created a level of immersiveness that you just felt like you were part of the show. And always found that really interesting to
Yeah,
watch. So the logistics of that is so much different than having static stick shots or, you know,
absolutely.
a
But it's
bit of
something like
movement.
yeah, and something like that. That's also like I mean, phenomenal writing, incredible actors who can handle that. That's like kind of the classic theater training thing. People who can be able to handle that stuff and do the stuff and do the pacings and get the oneers and there's a lot of confidence in if you're doing stuff in a oneer, there's a lot of confidence that you're not going to want to get into post and maybe trim some stuff out of the scene because you can't do that. And the West Wing, amazing, brilliant, groundbreaking. But Aaron Sorkin and
Yeah,
Lee Schwambi, like two of the best. So
Sorkin's one of my favorites. That
yeah.
and and Newsroom again was phenomenal. With Daniels, I've probably watched that series more times than I care to
Somebody
admit.
just that I had lunch with today, they said they just watched Newsroom for the first time and how much they loved it. Yeah, but isn't that
It's
great?
phenomenal.
I mean,
It is.
like how great that you can still discover stuff. So
Yeah. And I fall in love with it every time I watch it again. I
it's
really
so
enjoyed
good.
it, but and I guess that's that art of storytelling and that beauty in those moments that you get to create, not just for yourself, but for other people. But I guess, you know, for the audience today, what are some of those moments for you that stay with you in creating these moments for others?
Well, I feel really fortunate to be working on a couple of shows this year that I think are so that are trying to say something also politically and creatively. And um, it's I find it really inspirational. And I was like, as artists in these kind of tumultuous times, I think that's all we can do is work on something that might help people think or question. Um, I also am a big believer in how the arts can humanize the other side when people feel like they're on an opposite side from each other. I feel like the more we look for what we have in common, to get to a place of healing instead of just angrily pointing out the differences. But I think what's important, like The Handmaid's Tale, which came before The Testaments, the new show that I just worked on, showing the dangers of misogyny and um, and looking at certain aspects of the dangers of mixing church and state um, and um, and also but humanizing the characters and understanding how it's things can be a slippery slope and that maintaining one's moral compass in a complicated world can be very difficult. And I love working with these kind of gray characters, that aren't fully black and white, that again, humanizing people that that people don't fully understand. And like through television and film all the way back, it's like the way people, even art was like, even art, but art before we had moving pictures, people would go to museums and look at art to see worlds that they had never seen or couldn't imagine. And looking at that and looking at pieces of people, on the other side of the world or on the other side of the political spectrum, and empathizing and caring about others, I think it's something that we can hopefully help people do and not dehumanize and I think that the a million deaths is a statistic and one death is a tragedy, and most of the things I work on are like, one death at a time. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
far more humanizing tragedy of stuff, as opposed to just like people getting mowed down.
And I guess that was something else I wanted to touch on is those sorts of things that you, as a director, want people to take away from a project that you choose to work on, because it feels to me that it's not, the projects that you are enjoying the most aren't just sort of work, that
Yeah.
there's some choices in the type of work that you're wanting to be involved in, which I think creative people magnetize to the things they really want to be part of, and things that either challenge them or allow them to tell part of their story or to impact others.
Yeah, no, I feel very grateful that I've gotten to work this year on a couple of projects that are very near and dear to my heart. And but sometimes I don't want to be overly precious with it either. Like, you never know. And sometimes like that's the thing that's available to do in February. And you're like, hey, that'll be fun. Like we can have some fun with that
Yeah.
and maybe meet some new great people. And, it's like, that's awesome. Like if it can do these other things, it's a bonus. But either way, I'm getting to play make believe for a living. So it's not a bad deal,
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we have good times on stuff. And because at the most basic level, the other thing we can do is it was like, just entertain, right? And lift somebody out of the bad day they might be having, or, take their mind off their troubles. Like that can be noble as well. And you can do that with any, with anything without making them have to think about stuff. If just like give them a little bit of relief from all of it. Like sometimes you just need a good time, and that's okay too,
Definitely. So, I mean, outside of film and TV, like, what are some of your passions and hobbies that recharge you, that do exactly that give you those breaks and moments?
Well, I'm going scuba diving again next week. That's like my favorite thing in the world to do. So I just wrapped.
Amazing.
I got back 2 days ago, and I'm leaving in 3 days to go scuba diving again. And I went over the Christmas break as well. So like I do go scuba diving every chance I get. There's something almost meditative about it. Like I also meditate, but getting in the water and being surrounded and truly immersed in nature, and you very much have to be in the moment. So there's that same kind of flow that like you get in the creative process when we're on set, just being really, really present and really in the moment. You can't think about anything else. It would be very dangerous too. You can't, you just gotta stay super present and aware of everything around you, and really enjoy this, beautiful earth that we have.
Yeah. Well, we have some amazing shipwrecks in the coast of Western Australia. So if you ever get yourself to Oz, there's definitely some amazing scuba spots to head to.
I went scuba diving in Australia when
Brilliant.
when we got engaged. It was kind of oh my gosh, it was hilarious. My husband, it was his first time diving. And let's just say, a long story short, like get your instructions before you're on the boat, kids. They were doing the thing like they're like, oh, we can just teach you on the boat on the way out. I was like, you can't learn to scuba dive on an hour and a half boat ride. Like that's, and not only that, it was the shortest. They were like, all right, so get your mask, clear your mask, get your regulator, give it a good blow. And then every meter or so, just give yourself a regulation. I was like, oh my God, he got it. He jumped in the water. First thing he did was inhale, choked, and then that was the end of that one for him. And
Oh, dear.
and he didn't, and he had the camera, so I didn't get any pictures with all the great sharks that were there. So, yeah. So, and photography, I love photography. But I haven't taken on underwater photography yet. That might be a new challenge, kind of mixing the two things together.
Love that. I love that. And can you give us a sneak peek into anything that you're working on next? We won't tell anybody.
Well, I mean, The Testaments is new.
Yeah.
That's the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, and based on the book by Margaret Atwood. And then after this, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go start on Vault Rising, which is with, it's been announced, so I'm not blowing anything, but it's with Jensen Ackles and Aya Cash, and it is it's from the boys' universe, and it's set in the 50s, so it'll be like a fun period piece as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
I'm
Sounds amazing. Well, look, before we wrap this up, we love to do a little thing at the end of our pods called the Fast Five. And basically, 5 one-word answers. Sounds really simple, doesn't it? So
I know.
well, I mean,
I've listened to the cast. I'm like,
we'll be fine. We'll start you off with an easy one. Favorite part of your shoot day? First shoot or final wrap? Or maybe it's the lunch break.
No. I was like, I wouldn't have said either one of those, honestly. It's like my favorite part of the shoot day is when you get the goosebumps. It's like that magical moment,
Yes.
like when you're like, oh, that was it. That was it. And that happens every day. So the one-word answer to favorite part of the shoot day would be goosebumps.
Goosebumps. I love that. My love is music. That's where my real passion is. And I love watching shows where, an artist will do something and then it just gets to that moment and you get that feeling and I go, that's what I was waiting for, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
little more difficult. One word to describe your directing style.
Supportive.
I love that. Favorite location you filmed in?
Canary Islands.
Ooh, amazing. What did you shoot there?
I got to scuba dive.
Now we understand.
I did. I got to scuba dive on my days off. It's true. Jack Ryan was shot there.
Very cool. Excellent. This might be the same answer. Favorite scuba diving location or destination?
Turks and Caicos.
Ooh. What made it that your favorite? What hit the top of the list?
Well, when you say favorite location, I would say, Hawaii is my favorite go-to spot where I go to all the time. But the best singular dive I ever had was in Turks and Caicos at a place called the Aquarium. And it's exactly what it sounded like. It was like diving in an aquarium. You're just surrounded by gorgeous, beautiful fish and coral. And it was really, really special and cool.
Incredible.
But Hawaii is fantastic, like every dive. So.
And last one, Cali or Texas?
Cali.
How's that going to go down with the Texas family?
I love my Texas family, but this is always the dream, right? Living in Hollywood,
California, right?
Living out here, working in the industry. There is industry that is starting to build back in Texas, which would be great. But, I've been out here, went to school out here, I've built my community out here, I've raised my family out here. This is where my kids have lived their whole lives. So I think just, based on our community that we have here, and I'm super grateful for everything that it's given me. But I was a girl from a small town in Texas who always wanted to live out here. And there was a day when I was working on Jack Ryan in Budapest, and my husband sent me a picture, and it was me like wearing braces and like going like, he's like, I found your junior high Insta, which I was like, they didn't have Instagram when I was in junior high, but definitely been the picture for it. And I was like, oh my God, I remember that so vividly. That was out at my family's hunting camp. A hunting camp is where one goes to hunt the deer because you can't do it at your house. So like, yeah, it's a place out there. And I was inside reading How to Be a Valley Girl, like For Sure Totally, which was a satire book, but I was reading it like the gospel because I wanted to move to California and I wanted to know how I was supposed to talk and what to do and all of the things. And my family was literally outside, like skinning deer, processing them. And
While you're trying to be a valley girl.
yeah, and my best friend and I were adding like in front of everything because that was one of the things it said to do in the book, and we didn't know how to do it right. So we would say, "I'm like going like to like." It was like we just we didn't know. We were trying to figure it out. And so he sent me that, and it was on the a day before the anniversary of my mom's passing, and my mom was always so incredibly supportive of my dreams, and I was in Budapest shooting Jack Ryan, and we had recently moved to Toluca Lake. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, my 12-year-old self is, I'm living my 12-year-old self dream. Like my 12-year-old self is freaking out right now. I was like, I'm working in Hollywood, Budapest, and I'm a Valley girl. I was like, I live in the Valley and I'm working in Hollywood. And I was like, this is everything I wanted to do. And I just really couldn't be more grateful.
And all started with a promise by your mum to a 4-year-old. I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
So I was like, it's great. And it's all the things, it's a gypsy lifestyle, and it can be inconsistent and challenging, and but it's the most rewarding thing, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, and I'm just really grateful for my family and the support that I've been given, and my wonderful husband who bounces around the world with me, and our crazy kids who've grown up with that as well. But I think it's shown them, and they've seen a lot of different places and different environments, and they're pretty, the more we see and meet other people and respect cultures that are different from ours, I think the more empathetic human beings we can be. And that's all I think we can really hope for as storytellers, is to kind of, again, tell others stories and help people empathize and connect and try to make the world a better place, one little laugh at a time.
I think people and places are all part of the special ingredients of creative glue at the end of the day that bring us together one way or another. Look, thank you so much for joining us today. That's all we've got time for this episode of Creative Glue, but join us next time as we continue to explore the creative glue that does bring us together. If you haven't already, check out the rest of our Creative Glue episodes available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. And make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned to see who'll be next joining us on Creative Glue.
Your ideas and my ideas will stick together like glue. 'Cause we've got the creative